You guys asked for it, so you shall receive it. To celebrate Spooktober, I'm gonna be beating Baldur's Gate 3 as Simon Belmont. The general consensus from the last video was that you guys care more about me properly building and roleplaying the character for the video than the difficulty of the challenge. So for this video, I'll still be playing on Honor Mode, but I'll also be bringing companions with me, and I'll have a couple of mods active as well, since there are mods on consoles now, partly to make things easier so that I can build Simon and roleplay him without worrying about it causing me to fail the challenge, and partly because I can't be bothered to keep turning my mods off and on again when I want to play for the video and on my personal time. Contrary to my first video, I'll be breaking this challenge up into 3 videos, one for each act. I've decided to make this change so that I can show you guys more of what happens in each individual act, rather than throwing away or offhandedly mentioning several dozen hours worth of events in the playthrough, so that I can get more videos to you guys faster, and so that you guys can leave comments on the videos to give me advice or leave suggestions or help me to decide on certain things. Being that I find the Smash Bros. Games usually represent all the main powers and abilities of their roster members as accurately and succinctly as possible, I'll be using Simon's Smash Bros. Rendition as a guideline to building my character, as well as D&D Builds' Build a Belmont video, since I think he did a really good job of capturing the general powers and abilities of the Belmonts too. So I'll be starting as a human, since Simon is, of course, a human, and it also gives him a bunch of equipment proficiencies, which are important for the build, since Simon fights exclusively relying on his physical abilities, his vampire killer, and his sub-weapons. And we're gonna start as a ranger, since not only is that what D&D Builds did, but more specifically, the Belmonts are a clan of monster hunters, so the ranger matches them the best. For favorite enemy, I of course went with Sanctified Stalker, since that's the option dedicated to killing the undead, and it gets me proficiency in religion, something I definitely need as a Christian vampire-slaying clan member, and I took Urban Tracker for Natural Explorer, since Simon doesn't have beasts he can summon, and since Castlevania's a castle, I think that matches an urban environment more so than a desert or a swamp or whatever. I went with the folk hero background since Simon's main goal was to defeat Dracula and repair the reputation of the Belmont clan, and after doing so the first time, he became one of the most well-known and legendary monster hunters ever. I made my ability score match the ones that D&D Builds went for in his guide, which was a fantastic stat set for reasons I'll explain later. I took proficiency in athletics for Simon's insane physicality, perception because that's one of the most important skills, and Simon would need it to suss out potential threats hiding in the shadows, and insight and investigation to be able to track down vampires and spot them if they try to blend into a crowd of humans. After 20 minutes of trying to make my Tav look as much like Simon Belmont from Grimoire of Souls and Smash as possible, and doing a pretty damn good job, I think, and then proceeding to spend another 10 minutes trying to make my Guardian look like the mysterious gypsy woman from Castlevania 2, I begin my journey to hunt down the monsters plaguing this land and once again prove the name of the Belmont clan. After looting as much stuff as I could find, I freed us to take advantage of its wanting to help me, but didn't risk losing its trust by trying to mutilate it. I teamed up with Lae'zel, rescued Shadowheart, and picked up all the throwables and explosives at the helm before landing the ship in Belmont fashion. When I wake up, I get to 2nd level, where I put a level into Fighter since I want to get at least 3 levels of Fighter for the Battlemaster subclass to get the trip attack maneuver so that I can replicate Simon's up B, his uppercut, by targeting a creature for a trip attack and then jumping with my bonus action. For our fighting style, we're going with Duelist as D&D Builds suggested since the throwing fighting style from 5e isn't available, so we can't strengthen our sub-weapons, so we might as well strengthen our future Vampire Killer, which is a one-handed weapon. I wake up Shadowheart, and we go ahead and fight these Intellect Devourers. Now, there are no whips in Baldur's Gate 3 unfortunately, but Vampire Killer in Smash Bros. Is more of a flail anyway, which is perfect since flails are very much available in Baldur's Gate 3, but since we don't have access to one yet, I'll have to just fight these brain boys with what I have on hand. Luckily, I was able to find some hand axes on the Nautiloid that I can use to replicate Simon's Neutral Beat, his axe sub-weapon from Castlevania. Because of my high strength, they actually do some pretty great damage, and Shadowheart and I are able to finish off the Intellect Devourers. Then I recruit Astarion, kill the injured Mind Flayer, and recruit Gale, but since Astarion is a vampire, even if Simon doesn't know that yet, I don't think I want one on my team. Before replacing Astarion, I go ahead and equip Halsin's campwear that I got from a mod since it looks much closer to Simon's leather and fur sleeveless armor than what I'm currently wearing does, and then I set back out. To replace Astarion, I recruit Lae'zel instead so that I can have a good healer and good source of radiant damage in Shadowheart, a good spellcaster and backline DPS in Gale, and a good frontline DPS in Lae'zel, who can also equip all the heavy armor and martial weapons I get along the run. Before adding her to the team though, I decided to take advantage of Astarion's powerful sneak attacks to take out the gobos in front of the grove. Astarion easily drops goblins from stealth, Gale magic missiles any near dead ones from afar, Shadowheart was out of spell slots at the time, so I had her just spam Firebolt and Sacred Flames, and Simon of course spent the whole fight thrashing on goblins with sheer raw power. We lost Eredin, but the rest of the adventurers and the tieflings were able to help us to defeat the remaining enemies with few losses. This was actually enough to get us to level 3. One of the mods I downloaded to help make Honor Mode a little less difficult so that I could actually roleplay and build the character of the video was a mod that adds levels 13 to 20 to the game like 5th edition D&D, and a second mod that doubles all XP you gain so that you could reasonably reach 20th level without having to scrounge up every single possible little piece of XP you could conceivably get your hands on, so that means that I will be leveling up much faster throughout the run. Let me know if you guys like this idea in the comments down below, but for now, I take a second level of Ranger and get an ASI from a mod I downloaded that grants you an Origin feat at second level to represent the Origin feat rule from the new 2024 D&D rules. Despite having Belnada's blood, Simon isn't much of a spellcaster, rather just being built different much like another vampire killer I love. So for his ranger spells, I only go with things that could be explained as him having superhuman physical power, or that could be used to replicate abilities he has naturally, like Hunter's Mark to represent his vast knowledge of, extensive training in, and experience hunting monsters, and Longstrider for his superhuman speed even though he's moving at like a mile a minute in the original Castlevania. For our second fighting style from second level Ranger, I went with Defense since I won't be using Archery much since I'll be relying on my sub-weapons for ranged attacks. Simon only wields Vampire Killer, so two-weapon fighting would be useless. And because I aim to wear Simon's leather armor for the entire run, so it's a free AC boost. D&D builds recommended Slasher for your Origin feat, but since that feat isn't in the game, I instead decided to strengthen my sub-weapons by getting Tavern Brawler to boost the damage of thrown weapons. This is just the start of how my sub-weapons end up becoming ridiculously powerful before even getting to Act 2. I then head into the Grove and recruit Will, only so that I can use an infinite money glitch to buy anything I want whenever I want. Immediately putting this to practice, I buy everything Aaron has, with notable inclusions being the Hedge Wanderer armor, a suit of leather armor that grants a +1 bonus to nature and dex saves and ability checks, the Ring of Flinging, which adds another d4 of damage to my thrown sub-weapons, making them even stronger, and the Dragon's Grasp throwing axe. Now, though it has sleeves, I have fur and leather armor to match what Simon is seen wearing. I knock out a couple things in the Grove, like saving Arabella, getting Kaga's Shadow Druid note for later, meeting up with Nettie, who enlists us to rescue Halsin from the goblins. I finally get Lae'zel on the team. We straight up slaughter that bugbear assassin. I threaten to murder Raphael because he's an evil devil from hell. I nab this silver pendant because enchanted magical items and scrolls are pretty much the only way Simon can ever use any magic. I easily, and actually even stealthily wipe out all the goblins in the secret Druid Grove tunnel. And I help Findal and gather all the explosives in the cave since I have a carry weight mod that allows me to carry like 10,000 pounds so that I don't constantly have to manage what I'm carrying. And I have a mod that lets me stack up to 99 barrels in my inventory, so I plan to use every explosive I can get and nuke Merkel, Gortash, Orin, and the Netherbrain. In any case, with all that done, I decided that it's high time I go pay Edwin, Brina, and Andrix a visit. They claim I'm the chosen one of some false god, so I kindly explain that I'm nothing of the sort, but they react to that information quite negatively and respond with violence. So I use my newly obtained Morning Star, the closest thing I currently have to the vampire killer, and kill these insane evil cultists. After we finish them off, I get a Mind Flayer Tadpole, which will allow me to unlock some good powers later that'll be great for the run. Upon reaching the Blighted Village, I use my threatening barbarian-like visage and demeanor, as well as my reputation as the best monster hunter around to intimidate the goblin ambush to let me through, and to get some experience, and more importantly the warped headband of intellect from Lump to act as my Simon's headband, I pick a fight with the ogres, and though things don't quite go all that well to start, After closing the game to reload my last save, I fought them a second time a little more strategically and was able to defeat all three of them and their goblin backup by having Gale and Shadowheart attack them from above, using my Hunter's Mark and Axe sub-weapon effectively, having Lae'zel back me up at ground level, using my Walmart brand Vampire Killer when necessary, and saving Lump for the end, at which point we all just ganged up on him. Headband acquired. With that done, I did a couple of other side things before moving on to the Goblin Camp, like scaring away Fezark and his goons to save Barkus, leveled up to 4th level, getting a 2nd level of Fighter and taking an ability score improvement to boost my strength to 18 and my wisdom to 13. I freed Barkus and scared off Gimblebach by letting him know the Nautiloid crash site had monsters in it. I broke into the refectory and fought off all the scavengers in a pretty awesome fight where I trapped one with my party away from his group by closing the door, killed him and opened it back up, and had my 2 frontline DPS party members, Simon and Lae'zel, beat the crap out of the scavs while Shadowheart and Gale took potshots at them from the next room. I defeated all the undead scribes, and I freed Withers, which is important because I can now revive fallen Conrads, but more importantly, I can now hire hirelings. See, I had the idea that, since Richter Belmont is an Echo Fighter for Simon and Smash, and Richter is incredibly popular as well, basically being the Joseph Joestar to Simon's Jonathan, and he's apparently popular enough that Netflix even made an anime about him, even though I've heard that the Netflix Castlevania series is pretty hit or miss with actual Castlevania fans. So I thought it would be cool if I hired a hireling and made him into Richter for Act 2 and 3. If you guys want to see that, let me know in the comments down below, but in any event, it's at this point that I find out that Astarion is a vampire. Now, I considered outright killing him, but I'm glad that I decided against that since I'd like to do his storyline and defeat Cazador since that's the closest thing to playing Castlevania in Baldur's Gate 3. My rationale here was that, while Lords of Shadow's canonicity is dubious at best, Simon's game does give us our best look at his personality, and in that game, though he nearly kills Alucard because Vampire Killer reacts from being near him, which leads him to believe that Alucard is one of Dracula's allies, once Alucard explains himself, Simon aligns himself with Alucard. Now, Astarion's secret is revealed in a very compromising situation, but considering that he's been our ally up to this point, he helped us with the goblins, and shares our plight of having the Mind Flayer tadpole, I think it's reasonable that Simon would hear him out. After learning that he doesn't drink human blood and just needs blood to have strength to fight, I had Simon forgive him for lying and begrudgingly allow Astarion to drink his blood. Simon's definitely a bit of a brute and a hothead, but he's not a cruel man, even apologizing to Alucard for his brash behavior, so I don't think it's that much of a leap to believe that he'd be willing to help an ally in need here. I still wasn't feeling ready to take on the 3 leaders at the Goblin Camp, so I did a couple more side missions, like helping Alfira, killing the Harpies, which was actually pretty fun this time around since my whole team wasn't constantly falling for the song, and I could actually hit them by throwing my axe sub-weapon, especially with the things doing like 20 damage per throw. I kicked Gale off the team because he started asking for magic items, and replaced him with Astarion for sneak attack power and so that he could be my Alucard. I went to the Owlbear Cave and got the Selûne stuff, as well as the Oakfather's Embrace, a leather armor set that makes it so that undead that hit the wearer take a d6 of radiant damage, perfect for the leather armor wearing undead slayer. I recruited Scratch. I also recruited Karlach after nearly killing her, again similarly to the Arikado situation. I killed all the fake heretical paladins of Tyr for my new ally in a quite tough battle, namely due to Anders' crazy powerful attacks and Cyril pushing Shadowheart off a 10-story building. And then I finally intimidated my way into the Goblin Camp, not really having become any stronger, but feeling more confident after beating Anders. Upon getting to the Goblin Camp, I used the Warlock Pack Weapon glitch to clean out Grat's inventory, specifically of note, the Returning Pike. To keep on the trend of this basically becoming a throwing build, the Returning Pike will be our side B, our cross sub-weapon. There isn't a crucifix available in the game unfortunately, but of course. So the next best thing I can do is use a weapon that you can throw that then returns to you like the cross does. There are 2 weapons like this in the game, the Returning Pike and the Dwarven Thrower in Act 3, and though they don't hit the creatures when returning like the cross does, this is the next best thing. I got Volo in trouble, beat Crusher and spared him only to kill him a couple seconds later for his ring for the extra movement speed, and then I remembered that I could actually probably take out the Face Spider Matriarch and Auntie Ethel for a level or 2 before going into the Sanctum since I was strong enough at this point. The returning pike does a lot of damage when you use it, which is great, but the downside is that when it returns to you, you instantly equip it. That's a great way to equip a weapon for free if you happen to drop it. Just throw the returning pike if you drop a different weapon, or throw the returning pike from the ground if you drop the pike itself. But it's not so great if you want to throw your pike and then fight off the enemies that close the distance next round with your vampire killer, because you'd have to waste a turn swapping back to it. For the matriarch, the fight started awful when I threw the returning pike before combat, but throwing it initiated combat and the pike didn't return, and after a series of unfortunate events, I decided to just reset the encounter. That was a shame because I was pretty close to winning and likely would've barring some bad luck. The second go was much better. I had Astarion start combat, the Phase Spider Matriarch walked on a web, so Shadowheart, who was still stealth, firebolted it out from underneath her and proned her, and after having Lae'zel and Simon attack the Matriarch as well, it was at a third of its maximum health on round 1, even less so after Astarion got his licks in. Surviving the round was tough because of the other phase spiders and the babies the matriarch summoned on her first turn, but after action surging and doing 12 damage to the matriarch with a critical miss from Simon's cross, likely due to the fall damage, and with Lae'zel for some reason just getting a second turn that I used to slaughter a phase spider that phased to us, they were as good as dead. A couple rounds later, and that's just what happened. Don't get me wrong, tough fight, especially due to their action economy advantage after summoning 2 swarms of babies. I mean, Lae'zel even died. But that first round was just too good. On my way out of the spider cave, I found the Sussurbark Forge, did the Alchemist's Cellar stuff, and got the Bracers of Defense, which will be my bracers for the rest of the run, even though I don't think they work on me because I'm wearing armor, but they do look like Simon's bracers. I recovered the Book of Thay, only to forget about it for most of the run, and rescued Auntie Ethel by knocking out Joel and Demir. When she teleported away, and the beautiful area became a nasty, dark, dank, musty bog swamp, I had an inkling of a feeling that she might be an evil hag, so I went after her to rescue Mayrina, the sister Joel and Demir had mentioned Ethel had kidnapped. While I was here, I thought I might as well get that Shadow Druid note from the Saga thing, so after having Astarion and Shadowheart's spiritual weapon solo one Woodwode, and having Simon, Lae'zel, and Shadowheart take out all the ancient mud methods, killing any methods they had spawned instantly, and the other Woodwode, I got the note and some loot, and then headed to Ethel's. I also gained another level from the fight, so I put another level into Ranger, got the enhanced leap spell because it can be explained as Simon just having superhuman jumping power. I took the Hunter subclass as it's literally described as a slayer of massive hordes of undead, and took Colossus Slayer because it would help me take down Dracula as mentioned by D&D builds. On the way to Ethel, I stopped to speak to a fellow monster hunter, but after an altercation broke out due to his reasonably hunting Astarion but unreasonably not listening to me trying to de-escalate, we had to fight. He wasn't too powerful, but I definitely didn't want to kill him being that he had his heart in the right place and was a fellow monster hunter, but I accidentally did when I forgot ranged attacks can't be non-lethal, so I had to go all the way back to when I entered the Putrid Bog, kill all the monsters at the tree stump again, take out Gandrel non-lethally this time, and then finally get to Ethel's. I revealed to Mayrina that I knocked out her brothers who had come to rescue her, but that upset Ethel, so she teleported Mayrina away, transformed, and our battle began. As you can imagine, a full team of level 5s can fight a single 5th level hag pretty easily. Lae'zel beat her pretty badly with extra attack, Astarion about nuked her with sneak attack, Simon threw his axe and cross with action surge, and Shadowheart summoned a spirit weapon and guiding bolted Ethel. By the end of round 1, much like the Phase Spider Matriarch, she was basically dead. Instead of running, Ethel tried to go down swinging with a vicious mockery, but all that got her was KO'd by Astarion and finished off by Simon Belmont. Going through her lair after having defeated her beforehand is pretty cool, and we get the exact kind of hero moments Simon would want, but after rescuing Mayrina and having Lae'zel bring Connor back because I wanted to finish the quest, but didn't think Simon, being a Christian and a slayer of undead, could get behind resurrecting a man as a zombie with dark magic, I wanted to do one last thing before taking on the Goblin Camp leaders. I recently learned of a shortcut to the Underdark, where if you jump down the hole in the Phase Spider Cave, it drops you there, so that's what I did, as my vampire killer for Act 1, the Corrosive Flail, is something you buy from Daryl in the Myconid colony. Unfortunately, I did not know that you needed to cast Featherfall on yourself to survive the fall. Seeing that the fall would only deal 16 damage, I jumped down, my party for some reason loaded in mid-air, and after a long, dark loading screen, I had lost honor mode. Womp womp. That really sucks, especially because I have a Featherfall scroll that I then use to get down safely in dishonor mode. But oh well, I've failed honor mode before, and this definitely won't be my last time trying to beat it. After landing safely, I'd take out all 3 Minotaurs in a surprisingly easy fight. Just not used to being this powerful. I survive having Lae'zel as a friend, and meet the mysterious woman, and we fight the Boulette, who was also kinda easy even though he has 100 temporary hit points and negates any damage lower than 15 while he has those hit points due to his Diamond Scales feature, but Shadowheart was able to fear it early in the first, so we just beat the shit out of him for 2 rounds straight, namely thanks to Simon and Astarion for getting rid of his Diamond Scales. He barely escapes, but we'll get back with him later. For now, I head to the Myconid colony and get what I'm looking for from Dareth. With a magical flail, my vampire killer, and the Cossack ring for extra damage now in hand, I rescue the owlbear cub from the goblins and then make my way inside, where I free Volo and Liam and then literally just start an all-out war with the goblins Castlevania style rather than trying to go the sneakier strategy route. I climb to the highest point in the room so that my thrown sub-weapons get good additional fall damage. I knocked down the overhanging chandelier for extra damage, but stupidly forgot to move my teammates out from right underneath it, hitting them too, and then I just proceed to destroy all the goblins. Even Shield couldn't protect Priestess Gut from the fall damage of my cross, though she did drop an entire statue on Astarion and Shadowheart, which is honestly kind of awesome. I've never seen that before, but even with the chandelier and the 2 statues, the goblins stood no chance. That's 1 leader down and another tadpole for me. I also stole all the Zent's explosives, so Merkel better watch out. I opened up the warp point to the Selene outpost in the Underdark, and I used a couple of my tadpoles to unlock some good powers like Favorable Beginnings and Luck of the Far Realm. Next was Minthara, who I just sent down the chasm after killing all of her gobos. 1 tadpole ain't worth a long drawn out battle I can avoid while still getting the XP for. With how much damage Astarion, myself, and Lae'zel were doing with Sneak Attack and Action Surge respectively, the Dror Ragzlin fight was a joke of an encounter. He had about 20 health left by the time round 2 started, one of his allies had already been completely one-shot by Astarion, and after a second turn from Astarion, 20 health remaining dropped to a measly 4. With that little health left, Astarion was able to finish him off with a vampire bite, and the fight from there was just a series of 1 and 2 shots with no real danger of losing anyone. Now I kinda wanted to do the Shadow Druid Kaga fight since it's been a while since I've done it, and I'm certainly strong enough, but I didn't realize that if you defeat the 3 Goblin Camp leaders, Halsin can free himself without your help, so the best I could do was warn him that Kaga's in league with Shadow Druids, which never amounts to anything. Also, I let the Tieflings keep their money because I don't need it, and because I need the good reputation more than the gold. Before finishing up with the first section of Act 1, I went back to where Halsin was being held, and of course everyone was dead, but because of that, I was able to get my hands on the Linebreaker boots. A pair of magically enchanted fur and leather boots that look like Simon's own boots while still having a useful enchantment. The Tieflings and I celebrate our victory over the Gobos, and, with the Grove and Goblin Camp section done now, it was time now to forge into the Underdark, so I warped to the Myconid colony and enlisted Glut to help us defeat the nearby Duergar for Spa. We were able to take out their archer and heavily damaged Gek in the first round, but his other 2 allies were invisible so we couldn't see them, and because we weren't able to drop Gek before his turn, he summoned a bunch of zombies to help him. Glut was able to deck Gek and finish him off with an opportunity attack, and though the zombies are a little annoying because they can survive a one-shot, making Gek a spore zombie definitely helped our action economy. I was able to reveal Lurgon with Shadowheart's Spirit Guardian spell, and not only did he not survive for much longer after that, but Garmor, the Barbarian, revealed himself not long after and basically got jumped on sight. After all that, it was just a matter of beating the zombies until they stayed down. Glut wanted to betray and destroy the Spa colony, but I couldn't abide by that, so we had to destroy him. Also, something funny I love about this fight, Glut's own Spore Zombie always turns against him. Like, it'll become hostile to you if you leave and then come back later, but for the initial fight, it teams up with you against its master. After taking out Glut, I quickly kill all the nearby hook horrors, and even that Boulette from earlier that escaped to collect the Sisser Tree bark and all the Sisser Tree blooms so that I can clean out the Arcane Tower, and I get to 6th level in the process, where I take my 3rd and final level of fighter for the Battlemaster subclass class, which I took for the trip attack battle maneuver, which, in conjunction with a jump before or after the attack, will be our up B attack for this run, the uppercut attack. After using the bark to make the Susur Greatsword, I used the Susur Flowers to deactivate all the turrets in Arcane Tower and loot the place dry, including the mundane chest and the ingredients for the potion for the Omelum quest, which I completed. I also let Spawn know about both the Duergar and Glut, and got to loot their treasure room as a reward before hopping on Gek's boat and heading off to Grimforge. I pushed Greymon into the drink and took out the patrol party on the way over, did all the side content at Grimforge I could remember, like getting a rune powder vial from Philomena, Volo gave me a magic eye that can see invisible creatures, I killed the Maragon, and I took out the Mimics, but I also decided killing Grim was a tad out of the way, so I just headed to the near cave-in, and though I considered leaving him there to die, I don't think Simon would abandon the gnomes and allow for them to remain slaves, so I used the explosive charges to free Nier, and began the major boss fight of Act 1. For the first round, I pretty much just focused Nier, using my uppercut to get to him, and then action surging to lay into him with my vampire killer, and though he activated Psionic Visage and all of his Duergar minions attacked us, Lae'zel with extra attack and action surge was able to bring him down to 5 HP. Where he failed to do anything on his turn due to being silenced by Lae'zel's sword, and would die at the start of Shadowheart's next turn due to his starting the turn in her Spirit Guardian spell. The Duergar were by no means weak, especially with their numbers advantage, but with Nier, the biggest threat of them all, out of the way, though Lae'zel got downed a couple times, Shadowheart was able to keep us all alive, and we were able to finish off the forces of Grimforge and save the Iron Hand Deep Gnomes. I took up the quest of rescuing Wulbren from Moonrise, Marcus agreed to rest at our camp and travel with us briefly, and we went through the Risen Road, saved everyone at Joaquin's Rest, pacified and killed all the gnolls there, including Flind since we were more than strong enough at this point, got attacked by the Zent guys we'd just saved for some reason and had to kill them in self-defense, leveled up again to 7th level, where I grabbed a 4th level of Ranger where I just maxed out my strength with an ASI, I completed the delivery job for the Zentarim at Joaquin's Rest, freed Oscar, and then I was onto the Gith encounter at the Mountain Pass. Lae'zel was pretty insistent on playing nice with the Gith, so I convinced her to lie to Voss to keep the peace. I finished up any business I had left in this section of Act 1, like turning in Nier's head to Spa, and enlisting the entire Myconid colony to aid in the destruction of the Book of Thay, which I remembered at this point before continuing onward, and we made our way to the Rosemary Monastery. We had found the Gith of the nearby Crush that Lae'zel had been trying to get us to, but we still had to make it to the Crush itself for the supposed cure to the tadpoles they have. So after taking out a legion of drunk kobolds and getting the Dawn Master seal for later, we made it to the Crush. I used my famous Belmont monster hunter reputation to intimidate the Gith Yankee guards into letting me in, and after cleaning out Jira's inventory to get another vampire killer in the Defender Flail and to strengthen my party, I spoke with the Gustel of the Crush and allowed Lae'zel to use the Zaithisk for purification of the tadpole. Things started looking a little dicey when I noticed a Pepto-Bismol looking fluid leaking out of Lae'zel's ears and realized it was her brain turning into goo. So I passed a DC 30 persuasion check after using like 4 inspiration and convinced her to get out of the machine before it kills her, but the Gustel didn't like that, so she and her cronies try to finish us off. I used my Alchemist Flask, my down B holy water, to start the fight, and other than the fact that Astarion was so stealth that he evaded detection from even me and I forgot to use him for half of the fight, we were able to defeat the Gith pretty uneventfully, though it was fun to use a lot of AoE spells and abilities here, and it did push me to 8th level, where I grabbed a 5th level of Ranger and got enhanced ability and I think extra attack. To represent Simon's final smash, Grand Cross, I'm gonna have to take 9 levels of Cleric at some point since I've decided that the best way to represent Grand Cross is casting Guardian of Faith and Flame Strike since both do AoE radiant damage. I'm planning on either doing Cleric of Light for Lothandar since he's the closest god to, well, God in D&D, but my brother-in-law recently pointed out to me that War Cleric would mechanically be the better choice, especially since, while I could theoretically use War Cleric's abilities since they just use Divine Magic to strengthen your attacks, I wouldn't be able to use any of Light Cleric's features because they're straight up magic, which Simon doesn't use. Let me know what you guys think I should do for that moving forward into Acts 2 and 3, or if you have a way to replicate Grand Cross without having to waste 9 levels on a class I'll barely use. I'd like to circumvent that if at all possible, but I'm not really seeing any other way to get Grand Cross, which is an AoE nuke of Holy Divine Power. The fight against the Resin was a pain in the butt because she feared 2 of my main damage dealers right from the offset, but with Shadowheart pulling her own weight and Lae'zel really clutching up, we were able to take out the Kithrak as well as her wolves in backup in a fairly tough fight all things considered. Next was the Inquisitor fight, and oh boy, when I tell you that this fight was actually easier than the Captain fight just now, I mean it. I decided to start by focusing the Inquisitor since he has an ability that summons autonomous weapons to help him when he's hit, but they all disappear when he's killed. Astarian's sneak attack got rid of his ready to parry, and though Wargaz dodged a lot of Lae'zel's opening attacks, one crit dropped him to almost half health, and an action surge further dropped him to basically a third of his maximum HP. Simon then finished him off with his vampire killer, and all that was left was his backup, which were honestly fairly tough altogether. Lae'zel and Astarian were able to take one out instantly together, but one almost dropped Simon, so Simon and Shadowheart took out one of the Ardents. Astarian was able to drop the last Ardent, and Simon defeated the final Gith warrior with his uppercut. The false god Vlaakith commanded that we kill the mysterious woman in the prism, but we instead bolster our alignment with her and escape the Kresh's forces through the secret Lathandar tunnel, where I'm able to get the blood of Lathandar and warp back to the Mountain Pass entrance. Finally, on my way to the passage that will lead me to Act 2, I had to fight some undead, which I'm happy to do as that's my element as a Belmont. Despite the Death Shepherds being annoying and reviving any undead I destroyed, forcing me to focus them first, the encounter was uncharacteristically easy, and with them defeated, the path to the Shadow-Cursed lands was open, the place where Simon Belmont would be best suited for combat. With his anti-undead armor equipped, with his axe, cross, uppercut attack, his holy water, both the alchemist flask approximation and the literal holy water he has, and his vampire killer in hand, Simon Belmont was ready to set off into the eternal night of the darkness-stricken lands between him and Baldur's Gate to defeat the evil forces of the false god the Absolute and save the Sword Coast, as well as the whole of Faerun, maybe even all of Toril. I make Richter as best I can, who unfortunately had to be an elf since the elf hireling is the only male that looks remotely human, and then I equip him with the simple robes dyed blue, the closest clothes I could find to his visually, the corrosive flail since the burning acid closely matches the flame whip item crash Richter uses, the bracers of defense since Richter actually gets the bonus and they're as close to his wrist wraps as I could find, the boots of speed which most closely matches actual boots for now, and an assortment of enchanted rings and necklaces. I'll be building him following Tulok the Barbarian's Guide to Building Trevor Belmont, but with some modifications to match one of the strongest Belmonts ever, so first level fighter, and, I believe since this hireling's background is as an acolyte, I was given an opportunity to choose a god to worship, so I chose Ilmater, since, as someone pointed out in the comments of the last video, Ilmater shares many similarities with Jesus, both taking on the suffering of others to save them. After that, I level him up to where the rest of the party is, giving him a second level of fighter, and taking the dueling fighting style, taking a third level of fighter to get the Battlemaster subclass for the trip attack, our uppercut for the run, a fourth level of fighter where I get Tavern Brawler to round out strength and get more damage on our sub-weapon attacks, a fifth and sixth level of fighter where I get extra attack and use an ASI to bump up dexterity, a level of monks since Belmonts are also proficient martial artists and that's what Tulok took, and finally a second level of monk where I used another ASI to boost dex. With Richter built, Voss tracks us down and pledges to side with us to take down Vlaakith, and my party of Richter, Shadowheart, and Astarian and I head into the Shadowlands, where a goblin greets us and explains that we need a source of light to move around here or else we'll be devoured by the shadows. I swapped out Lae'zel for Richter because we basically tackled all of our more important plot points in Act 1 at the Crash, and, with this party, we have Simon Belmont, Richter Belmont, Astarian, our Alucard stand-in, and Shadowheart, who can kinda be Maria Renard, Richter's distant cousin. The goblin thinks that we're true souls, and while Simon wants to kill the goblin and be done with it, Richter sees an opportunity to make it to the heart of the Absolute, so he convinces Simon to play along. I wanted to roleplay Richter in this act since this is his introduction to the run, but since Richter is a hireling, the game will often forcibly swap to Simon for plot-pertinent dialogue, so I just roleplay it as Richter respecting Simon's authority and seniority, but making suggestions that Simon can choose to listen to or ignore. The way I see it is that, while they're both Belmonts, so their motivations and ends are quite similar as well as how they go about achieving their goals, Simon is more of an epic, classical hero like Achilles or Beowulf. He's stoic, righteous, and maybe a bit brash like we discussed in the last video. For Richter, I'll be roleplaying him as though he returned to being like how he was in Rondo of Blood after the events of Symphony of the Night, but still grew and changed from those events, so he's a bit like a 90s anime protagonist like in Rondo, but he's more mature, cautious, and cool-headed like in Symphony. He no longer has the insecurities and inhibitions about not getting to be a hero that Shaft used to brainwash him, but he now feels obligated to make up for resurrecting Dracula again, so Simon will be the brawn, and Richter will be the brain. Kinda. I mean, Richter's a bit hot-headed as well, but even in Rondo at the age of 19, he thought to study the layout of Castlevania before attempting to siege it, which is doubly impressive when you consider that Castlevania's structure is constantly changing. Well, we make it to Karnas, a Drider that worships the Absolute, and though Richter and Simon initially agree to follow this caravan of cultists because they have a moon lantern, a special lantern that allows them to move freely throughout the Shadow-Cursed lands, that changes when a group of Harpers attempt to ambush the cultists. Being that these people were enemies of the Absolute, it would appear that they are good people. So Simon and Richter both agree to forsake the plan to blend in to help the Harpers, as no tactical advantage would be worth sacrificing innocent lives for. I've got a mod that adds a bunch of new spells from D&D 5e to the game, so I test out some of those with Shadowheart, and I have Astarion sneak attack from the shadows, as you'd expect. But for Richter and Simon using the Defender Flail from now on for more AC, they really got to flex their uppercut attack and their general finesse and skill with the Vampire Killer, with both of them getting to attack 4 times on the first round with extra attack and action surge. Unfortunately, despite getting help from the Harpers, the Absolute Patrol was really strong, especially Karnas, and they were able to kill Simon, Shadowheart, Richter, and most of the Harpers. We only survived and defeated the cultists thanks to Astarion's incredible stealth abilities. Great start to the run. After having Withers revive everyone and getting the Moon Lantern, I head to Last Light, befriend Jaheira, get the evasive shoes from Mattis for Richter since they look even closer to his actual shoes and further buff his AC, chat with old friends at the inn, as well as Art, who we'll be doing the quest for since there's nothing more Belmont than saving the lands from an evil curse. I get the Selenite Blessing from Isabel, which Simon and Richter were both conflicted about since Selene is, of course, a pagan god, and we defended the people of Last Light Inn from Marcus and his fiends. For the first attempt, never a good phrase to hear, it was easy enough to steamroll Marcus, but his fiends would surround Isabel and tear her to shreds, and since I wanted to save her, I had to try again. The second attempt goes much better, as Shadowheart is able to banish Marcus right at the start of the fight, so we just dismantle his backup before he returns, at which point we jump Jutsu Kaisen him. I inform Halsin about Art, free Dolly, saved Roland, who I was kinda surprised was already wandering out here, and Richter talked Garen-Goth into not attacking us, which she took to mean blow yourself up. I was fully ready to fight her, and think Simon would be quick to it given her being a monster, but Richter's maturity and level-headedness from Symphony of the Night prevailed, since, when you actually talk to Garen-Goth, it almost seems like the natural progression of the conversation is her showing remorse and dying unless communications break down. She doesn't seem overtly evil, just defensive, sad, and confused. Unfortunately, we couldn't help her, but we did get a level for defeating her, so Richter took another level of Monk for the Way of the Four Elements subclass to get spellcasting, where he took Water Whip to give Vampire Killer some more whip functionality, Fang of the Fire Snake since, I don't know, it's just cool, and Sweeping Cinder Strike for some AoE options. Simon got his first level of Cleric, where I took Resistance, which could just be him praying for resilience, Guidance, which I don't need because I have Shart, and Thaumaturgy since it gives advantage on intimidation checks, and Simon would definitely be intimidating. I chose War Cleric as my brother-in-law suggested. I took Lathander as my god since it let me choose any of them, and I find him to be the closest to the good lord. And finally, for my first level spells, I took Bless, which could be, like, praying for people, but I'm probably not going to use it since it's outright magic, and the spell Ceremony, which allows me to do a couple different things, but the main reason I took it is the one exception I'll be making to Simon's not being able to cast spells. Ceremony can be used to make holy water. See, up to this point, all throughout Act 1, I've been conserving my rations of Alchemist Fires and Holy Water because they're the only non-recoverable consumables that I need for the run. At this point, both Simon and Richter have several dozen Alchemist Fires, so I think I can be a little more liberal with my use of those. But now because of Simon, we also effectively have an infinite supply of Holy Water, something that'll be very useful in this act in particular, an act full of undead who take super effective radiant damage from Holy Water. In preparation for the fight against Oliver's Shadows for the Thaniel quest to save the Shadowlands, I go ahead and take out the shadows and zombies already there, with Richter taking out half of them with his fire magic, and Simon taking out the rest with his axe subweapon. While I was there, I also opened the Sharan Sanctuary, begrudgingly took the Sharan Blessings since they'd be useful, had Shart do the ritual for some free stuff, I saved Arabella since I was already nearby, used some holy water on the two shadows, and then finished them off, and I made my way to the House of Healing on my quest to save Art in the Shadowlands, where I met Malice Thorn. Now, not only is he the deluded worshipper of an evil pagan god, but he's also literally in the middle of torturing somebody under the pretense of worship. But as ready as Simon was to jump for this guy's throat, and even Richter as well, honestly, Richter wanted to play this smartly. Richter used his knowledge of Shar's blasphemous teachings to remind Malice that he can't force Shar's teachings onto people, which then presented the opportunity for Richter to convince the nurses to kill each other, and for Simon to convince Malice to kill himself. I got the loot for Art's quest, and also found out the horrible truth about Arabella's parents, but before following up on either of those quests, I had one more thorn to deal with: Thistlebald. Thistlebald is another one like Garangoth, where he doesn't really seem to understand that what he's doing is wrong, so I just appease him until he pops, telling him tales of my Belmont exploits and foes slain, all while praying to God for the strength to survive each swig of Thistlebald's swill, and gathering information about Ketheric, the leader of the absolute cultists here, particularly about the cause of his immortality. With Thistlebald reduced to mush, I saved Art, and it was now time to defend Halsin as he rescued Thaniel, the spirit of nature for the Shadow-Cursed lands, from the Shadowfell, the evil dimension of Shar. As you can imagine, this battle took a couple of attempts, but for the winning attempt, I set up a fog cloud next to the portal for cover, had Richter throw out some holy water, as well as some actual holy water, I had Simon throw out some holy water as well, I had Astarion and Shadowheart clear out some of the low health adds, had Richter throw some magic and some hands, had Simon literally throw some axes, put Astarion and Shard on ad duty again, I had Richter fight off a wraith by himself, had Simon throw some more holy water and help to take out some of the enemies Astarion and Shadowheart were fighting, and finally, I was able to defeat all of the enemies even before the final round of defending the portal, and Halsin was able to rescue Thaniel. I figured that, while I was at it, I could also go ahead and finish up the quest. So I headed up to where Oliver's at, find him twice, inform Arabella of her parents' fate while I was at camp to tell Halsin about Oliver, and then take on Oliver's army of shadows. This fight was actually tougher than I expected. Mommy and Daddy weren't all that strong, but dealing with the Shadowlings was a lot. The Oakfather's Embrace really helped to deal radiant damage to any of the shadows that attacked Simon, but by the end of things, even with all the crosses and axes and holy water and uppercuts two Belmonts can muster, just like in the Karnas fight, the last man standing was Astarion, lurking in the shadows. After convincing Oliver to go back to Thaniel, securing the Shadowlands' safety, I revived my team and finally set out for Moonrise Tower. Mizora appeared while I was heading towards the entrance and asked me to save a devil for her, but I could tell that it was urgent. So while Simon and Richter aren't exactly the types to make deals with devils, since she's Will's patron, we decided to heed her on the condition that he be released from his contract, to which she agreed. I get the sharpened snare cuirass from the Zentarum Rao for Simon for Act 3, since there won't be many undead to proc Oakfather's Embrace there, as well as the Circlet of Hunting for Simon after supporting Astarion's denying this woman's vampire bite kink, because the circlet fits Simon better thematically, is more useful for him, and looks more like his actual headband with the red gem. After that, I witness Ketheric Thorm's immortality firsthand, then I free his to-be-executed goblin soldiers, and also kill all the guards in the downstairs prison to help free the tieflings and the Iron Hand gnomes for both Roland and Barkus back at Last Light. The mysterious woman and I had a heart-to-heart, Shark gives me her backstory, I save Roland's siblings and Wolbrin and send them to Last Light, and since I was pretty close to a level up and figured I could manage it before going into Shar's Gauntlet, I jumped down into the Mind Flayer Obliate and killed the two hook horrors down there with the Water Whip Vampire Killer, the Cross sub-weapon, some holy water, and some Belnatis-style fire magic from the grandson of Juiced Belmont. Unfortunately, that didn't pull us over the top, but after Raphael attempts to seduce Astarion with a deal to tell him what the scars on his back say, at the cost of killing one of Raphael's enemies in the gauntlet, I hit Astarion on the nose with a rolled-up newspaper, tell Raph to go to hell, and head into the mausoleum. Upon completing the first puzzle, I leveled up. Simon got another level of Ranger, which gave him a second favorite enemy. I took Magebreaker, since Belmonts often do battle against evil wizards and dark magics. For the second Natural Explorer, I took Wasteland Wanderer Cold, since Transylvania is a cold place, and I got an ASI that I used to bump my dex up to 16. For Richter, I took my first level of Cleric and got him Hand of Radiance, Moonflare, and Word of Radiance as his cantrip since he can actually cast offensive holy magic. I went with the Light Domain for basically the same reason, and I took Guiding Bolt and Shield of Faith as my first level spells, though thinking about it now, I should have taken Ceremony as one spell like Simon for double Holy Water. I'll have to remember that for Act 3. When I got to the Gauntlet proper, I told off the bone spawn of the evil necromancer Balthazar and tried to fight off the Dark Justiciars, which didn't go so well the first time since I forgot about Radiant Retort, which sends any radiant damage they take back at the dealer, until I'd thrown half a gallon of holy water at them, which in turn threw me into the ICU. Luckily, I'd used a bunch of scrolls I'd been hoarding to make some of the harder fights in the Gauntlet a smidge easier, so a run back using mostly the Vampire Killer, the Cross, and Axes yielded a much better result. Thanks to using our Vampire Killers, the Cross, our Axes, and our Uppercuts to cover a significant amount of ground and dominate the field during the fight, the Dark Justiciar fight in the Balthazar room was incredibly easy. While I think that Simon and maybe even Richter would normally on-site this dude, this Cleric dialogue option was just too on-brand to pass up, and then it led to an equally perfect Ranger option, and from there, the roleplay sucked me in. Simon and Richter agreed to play Balthazar's little game, and then take him out once they knew they could secure the Night Song, an ancient relic responsible for Kethric's immortality, so first I was off to face Yrgir, who left me conflicted. On one hand, a Belmont would never parley with a devil, less so to consider a deal with them, so I wanted to kill this Orthon, but on the other hand, killing him would be playing right into Raphael's hand, so I attempted to ally with him, but he was unfortunately about that action, so we fought. I had Simon start the round by throwing some holy water at the devils and throwing a couple axes at Yrgir, which did some decent damage. With Shadowheart and Astarion fulfilling their typical combat roles, I had Richter uppercut Yrgir's Displacer Beast and follow up on the prone creature with several strikes from his Vampire Killer. Next round, Simon followed in Richter's example and uppercutted a Maragon to attack Yrgir with his Vampire Killer, and Richter himself, now facing a Maragon and the Displacer Beast, used the item Crash on his Corrosive Vampire Killer on the two. Simon then defeated Yrgir, and though the battle following against the rest of the Maragon and the Displacer Beast was pretty difficult and definitely came down to the wire, we defeated them all and won the fight. Next were the 4 Trials of Shar, which were all incredibly easy. For Soft Step, I just had Astarion Supreme Sneak to become invisible, and then just Misty Step through this window to get the gem. For Self Same, we got to ambush the clones because of my Volo Eye, so they pretty much all died instantly. For Faith Leap, since I have a mod that allows you to pick a vampire origin and character creation, and that somehow translated to Astarion becoming a full vampire instead of just a spawn, I had Astarion become a gaseous cloud and fly across to get the gem. And finally, shocker, for Silent Library, Astarion took care of it. Granted, I got this weird infinite initiative bug, so I brought in everyone else to fight the Justiciars anyway, but at least Astarion got what we came for. I also spoke with Ratman before taking a long rest, and what was cool about that is, because I drank a Speak with Animals potion to talk to the Rat Dark Justiciar, after Raphael told Astarion about the Profane Ascension and Arabella re-steeled her conviction, when this interaction happened that I'd seen so many times before, I actually got to talk with Scratch and Owlbear in, like, the most wholesome conversation ever. That's really cool. After gathering all of the gems and floating down to the Shadowfell entrance, I let Shart pray to her pagan god. I tried to kill Balthazar as soon as I saw him, but the game didn't let me. And then it was time to free the Night Song, who turned out to be a person, specifically Dame Aelin, the Aasimar daughter of Selene. To make the fight a little quicker, I tried to move all of Balthazar's undead minions to the edge of the cliff while they were still bone piles, but the game wouldn't let me move this pile for some reason, so I just yeeted it into the void, which Balthazar, well, he didn't really like that. I threw some holy water and axes at him, and his response was to summon an undead army, but that wasn't going to stop me from focusing him before he could cloud kill anyone. After Richter axed Balthazar some questions and then uppercutted him, Shadowheart's Guardian of Faith finished him off, and from there, it was just a matter of clearing out the spooky, scary skeletons. With Kethric's second-in-command dead at my feet, Simon made some more holy water to replenish the stock we just used, and then Richter and Simon convinced Shart to free the Night Song. With Aelin free, it was time for us to leave the Shadowfell, finally assault Moonrise Tower, and face General Ketheric Thorn, chosen of the Absolute, and also secretly Merkel because this guy changes gods like he's changing clothes. Jaheira gives a rousing speech to her Harpers, I enlist her aid against the Absolutists, and she dies like 4 times, which I didn't like, so I had to keep starting over. The key to winning this fight was to hard focus Zrel before she could get a chance to black hole us, have Jaheira ice storm the center of the room to slow down advancing Absolutists, and then pick them off from afar as they close the distance and finish off any that make it across. The biggest helps here were Simon and Richter's action economy and just the sheer number of allies we had, and after a bit of back and forth, we eventually whittled them down and defeated them all. Radija hits us with a fireball when we try to get to Ketheric, but after an uppercut and a subsequent beatdown, we met with the General, who I decided not to convince this time, wanting to fight and defeat Ketheric and Merkel similarly to a Dracula fight like the one in Rondo where he transforms. To start the battle against Ketheric, Richter threw holy water at each of the pairs of Necromites and then punched Sustera in the face. I had Astarion finish off half of the now burning Necromites as well as Sustera. Shart tried to turn undead to mid-effect. Simon doused Richter's holy water with holy water, greatly damaging 2 Necromites and finishing off 2 others. Richter uppercutted the General, Simon did as well. Richter used his water vampire killer to trip Ketheric, and then we all proceeded to jump him before he got a chance to get back up, so he got scared and ran away, or as Jaheira astutely put it, he made a tactical retreat. After defeating the remaining Necromites, I accidentally permanently recruited Jaheira. See, I have a mod active that allows me to increase my party size, just some fun shenanigans for my personal playthroughs, but in this run, I've just been using it to bring Will with me for the gold glitch, rather than having to go through all the effort of dismissing someone, bringing Will, then dismissing him, and bringing the first companion back. Well, I wanted to recruit Jaheira just to have her go back to the camp, but apparently you can't dismiss her if you recruit her here, at least not until Ketheric is defeated, so guess we got a 5-man team. She can be Terra, I guess. She's kind of a nun, right? Like a pagan forest nun, but still kind of a nun. Regardless, I went through the Mind Flayer colony and killed all the enemies within, including Balthasar's lab full of undead, where I had Jaheira summon the spirit of a massive red dragon that murdered everything. It was awesome. From that battle, I was finally able to hit level 11, where Simon took a 2nd level of Cleric and bumped his Wisdom with an ASI since it's a spellcasting modifier, and Richter took a 4th level of Monk and bumped Intelligence and Wisdom to round them off. From there, I killed Us's captors and freed it, killed the Merkelites before they could perform their ritual and get free armor of Agathis. I very reluctantly freed Mizora, the trap devil herself, getting Will free of his pact in 6 months. Jaheira summoned a hag to help us take down the nearby Mind Flayers after we released all the people trapped in the pods, at which point we defeated them all with no casualties and saved Zevlor, who'd been trapped here since his people were ambushed by cultists while traveling through the Shadow-Cursed lands. And then, with everyone in tow, it was time to confront the Chosen Three and fight Ketheric Thorn. Now, this is where I really messed things up. To free Aelin before the confrontation, I summoned Scratch and made him invisible, but I forgot to separate him from the group after getting him into position, so when I took off turn-based mode so Simon could make some holy water, Scratch's invisibility started wearing off and he started coming back, but when I turned turn-based mode back on, I guess he was too far away to be included, so his invisibility wore off. I panicked because they were gonna kill him before he got a chance to free Aelin. I walked into combat to try to cut into initiative. I saw that Scratch was already dead, and I tried to check my last save to see how far back I'd be loading if I retried, and I accidentally saved. Now I had missed the chance to have a final dramatic moment with Ketheric, and was stuck with Aelin being like 90 feet away and still trapped, which caused me to lose this first fight against Ketheric several times. I hate single save mode, I really do. So the winning fight went a little something like this. I had Astarion Misty step to Aelin and use his action to summon a wolf, which is a power he gets by virtue of being a high-level vampire. I had Shadowheart summon Spirit Guardian and a spirit weapon. I had the dragon try and fail to fear Ketheric. Jaheira ice stormed the Necromites. Richter fairy fired Ketheric to make him easier to hit, and finally Astarion's wolf freed Aelin. Jaheira's red cap A spirit she summoned since her hag got stuck on the elevator down here, made it to Ketheric, and Simon summoned us with an action surge, but Ketheric killed us and the Mind Flayer stunned half the team at the top of the round. I had Jaheira summon a healing spirit to help with support, and though the red cap and spirit weapons stayed attacking Ketheric, he killed the red cap next. Finally, on this round, Team Belmont started to get things done. Astarion attacked Ketheric and the Mind Flayer, Shadowheart and Jaheira were on support, Richter uppercutted the Mind Flayer within an inch of its life, Simon uppercutted Ketheric, who in turn shield blew Simon onto his back, and the Guardian of Faith Sharpmaid finished off the Mind Flayer. We were starting to make real headway here. In the following round, Astarion nearly finished Ketheric off with a sneak attack, and Richter finished him off with his axe subweapon. For Merkel, like I've been saying this whole time, we made things simple. I stuffed 11 Nautiloid tanks, 14 Firewine barrels, 11 smoke powder bombs, 12 oil barrels, 6 smoke powder barrels, and 2 bottles of grease into a backpack, dropped it behind Merkel, and sprinkled some holy water on it. Amen. With Ketheric destroyed in an explosion so intense he couldn't even see me through the smoke, and with 3 kobold corpses nearby causing me to realize that I had been carrying around 3 drunk kobolds in a barrel for the better part of an act and a half, I defeated the rest of the Necromites, the mysterious woman informed me of the remaining dead 2 chosen in Baldur's Gate, I celebrated my victory with my allies, and we set out for Baldur's Gate. Though we had 2 more fights left, each with a shocking plot twist. First was the Gith ambush. Now, the fight itself wasn't too extraordinary, but we ambushed them with some holy water and axes and vampire killers and such, even taking out the Inquisitor on, like, the start of the second round. But the interesting plot twist was that, during the fight, I had Astarion use his vampire bite on one of the Gith, which actually turned the guy into a vampire. Pretty cool, but nothing crazy, I suppose, so what's the twist? Well, that Gith in turn bit Richter, making him into a vampire. Now it would seem that we have a Vampire Belmont, a vampire-slaying vampire. Let me know what you guys think of that development in the comments down below, and a way to cure Richter if you don't want him to be a vampire. Well, I took the Hraknir bracelets from the Inquisitor, since those will be Simon's new bracers to replace the bracers of defense that I gave to Richter, since they're the second closest to Simon's. Karlach and Will are eager for the Act 3 video, Shart trades one false god for another, the Shadowlands have been saved, and we finally set out for Baldur's Gate. Before we make it though, we're waylaid one last time before Act 3, where we have to save the mysterious woman from attacking Gith. I just have Astarion Misty step to the Astral Realm, and once we get to the mysterious woman, now revealed to be a Mind Flayer named the Emperor, though Simon and Richter are doubtful and cautious, we aid him once he proves to be our mysterious ally. This final fight was much easier than most of the Act 2 fights. Simon uppercutted one of the Gith into oblivion, Richter did the same to another, and thanks to some help from Astarion, Shart, the Emperor, and Simon's trusty cross, we were able to finish off the last 2 Gith and restrain Orpheus. The Emperor revealed his backstory and tried to get us to become half Mind Flayer, but since we just learned from Withers that Mind Flayers don't have souls, that's gonna be a no from me, Chief. Welcome back to my challenge run of trying to beat Baldur's Gate 3 as Simon and Richter Belmont on Honor Mode, where I got to do a bunch of things for the first time ever, like taking on the powerful wizard Leroican, battling against Raphael in the House of Hope, and doing the most Belmont thing of all, fighting the great and powerful vampire Cazador. This wasn't my first time playing through Act 3, but this was my first time really playing anything other than the main quest stuff, and I had a blast. In this finale, we'll finally see if I can defeat the Absolute and save Toril, or if the Belmont lineage and the world end here. To start, someone in the comments of the last video reminded me that the legendary Trident Nirulna also has the returning property, so I want to get that to be Richter's Cross, but first, I feed this newly orphaned wayward child, help some refugees procure shelter while peacefully resolving a dispute, talk to the smith— Orin! Anyway, I explained to the actual smith that it was Orin that knocked him out, not me. I spoke to Sister Giannis to begin the quest of investigating the death of fellow Ilmaterian Father Lorgan. I got the scabby pugilist circlet from Mattis for Richter, completing his outfit at last. Confronted a Sharan who invited us to the House of Grief to discuss Shadowheart's recent change of faith. Talk with this flaming— Orin! Alright, well, then I speak with the Gur, and though Gandrel is nowhere to be seen, they enlist our help in doing what we do best, killing vampires. Then I slay a newly born mind flayer in a windmill basement. I retrieved the missing letters for the post office. I destroyed the doppelgangers under the Ilmater church. And finally, I make my way into the circus and get the jump on a disguised Orin. Oh, she's not Orin, is she? Well, a quick reset later, and we're on to getting Richter's cross. I immediately steal Akabi's cheese ring, I have Richter get a jackpot and sneak past all the dinos, and that's where he was rewarded with his cross. This was enough to get everyone to 12th level, where Richter took his last level of Monk, and Simon took another level of Ranger and got Snare, which I'll never use, and Steel Will for advantage against saving throws against the Frightened condition, something someone as brave as Simon would surely have. I also went ahead and took out the fake Dribbles the Clown and his doppelganger allies pretty easily, even though they got Displacer Beast and Raptor reinforcements. The Fists and their Steel Watcher at the gate wanted trouble, but luckily some old allies came and rescued me, and I followed them back to their base where Wolbrun suggested I nuke the Gondians making the Steel Watchers, but I turned them down as I've got other plans. In an effort to really explore Act 3 as much as I can, and also to gain as much experience as possible, I went and intervened in this Guild vs Stonelord battle, though since both sides were criminals, I decided to take them both on. Seeing this as a perfect opportunity for Richter to test out his new cross sub-weapon, I had Simon Hunter's Mark and throw some axes to take out one enemy and heavily damage another, and then I had Richter throw his cross, which does AoE thunder damage, which is awesome, but it was also hitting Shadowheart, so I then had him close the distance with an uppercut to finish off one enemy and damage another like Simon did. I had Simon take out two more enemies with Vampire Killer, Richter stunned one enemy and finished off another, and then from there, we just cleaned up the Guild Thieves and Stonelord Thugs that were left. With the encounter done and more XP under our belts, we then spoke briefly with Detective Valeria about the doppelgangers under the church, who was dissatisfied with our lack of evidence, and then we saved this nymph from a mind flayer, which in turn got us a special invitation into Worm's Rock, getting us access to Gortash. Rather than going straight for him this time, I got stuff I want to do in the lower city first. But before heading there, I also have stuff I've got to do here for later quests, like taking Chihira to the Harper hideout and defeating these doppelgangers to start her High Harper companion quest, which is one of the quests for Act 3 that I wanted to do. I also spoke with Raphael, telling him off as always, and Voss, since I wasn't sure yet if I was going to side with Orpheus or the Emperor. With that wrapped up, I completely ignored Gortash's coronation invitation and headed to the city. Sure hope that won't have any unforeseen consequences later. Welp, first order of business in the city, Sorceress Sundries. I'm greeted by a familiar face who lets me know that his master, Loroakin, wants to speak to me about the Night Song. So I buy the Ring of Regen from Roland and then go and speak to him. He wants to enslave Daemalin like Ketheric did, and though I made my intentions to stop him abundantly clear, he's gracious enough to allow me the time to not only warn Aelin, but also to prepare to destroy him. He's got a bunch of elementals helping him, but we've got Aelin and also Roland, who betrayed his crazy abusive master to help us. Now, the first time I did this battle, I got annihilated by Loroakin's return damage effect, and the next couple of attempts got squashed because Roland kept dying, and I really wanted him to survive. But finally, after those failed attempts, I got the perfect storm. I started the fight by having Astarion black hole Loroakin and his constructs, Shadowheart brought in a Guardian of Faith and a Spirit weapon, and though the Air Myrmidon stunned Simon, Richter was able to drop it to half health, and Loroakin pretty much wasted his turn taking out the Guardian. Astarion brought Loroakin down to 1 hit point with a single sneak attack, Shadowheart kept everyone healthy and spawned another Guardian, Richter stunned the Air Myrmidon with a stunning strike and finished off Loroakin with an axe, and then we whittled down the remaining elementals until we had 1. Aelin gave Loro the Bane treatment, Roland got Ramazith's tower, which is pretty cool since I remember this thing from back in Baldur's Gate 1. I took out all of Loroakin's arcane cannons with lightning spell scrolls and sneak attacks, and then I raided the Sorceress Vault, getting Marco Heshkir, the Robe of the Weave, the spell scroll for Artistry of War, the Tharkiot Codex, which cursed Richter initially, but would bless him with 20 temporary hit points after every long rest after I had Shadowheart cure the curse. I got a bunch of stuff from this Trap Genie lamp and then summoned a Quasit to take my place in there. I got the Scroll of Bestial Communion, I got 2 Scrolls of Dethrone, the Annals of Karsus, and the Sword of Zariel that I've never used, as well as a bunch of ingredients and potions and scrolls. Afterwards, I gave the Annals of Karsus to Gale, and he considered following in Karsus' footsteps, but I talked him down from his ambitions, which earned him a council with Mystra. I spiffed him up for the first time since Act 1, and he got to speak with his ex, who asked him to give her the Crown of Karsus, the source of the Elder Brain's power, once we defeat it, to which he basically said, "We'll see." Based. We rest and Vlaakith shows up, crying and complaining about Lae'zel betraying her and offering her high-level management if she returns to the fold, but Lae'zel tells her to take a hike, which is also pretty based. The Emperor and I share a heart-to-heart, and after waking up from my long rest, I head back to the city, take out a Fishman ambush for XP, finally grab the Flail of Ages for Simon, which will be his Flame Whip, the strongest whip in Castlevania 2, and I decided that it was finally time to do the most important quest of this run. It was finally time to confront Cazador. After taking out Cazador's advanced guard and taking out the werewolves and beasts guarding Cazador's basement area, I made my way down, spoke to Astarion spawns, leveled up Simon and took my 8th and final level of Ranger, which got me an ability score improvement to bump my wisdom to 17, and then I confronted Cazador in the middle of his profane ritual. Now, being that this is an incredibly tough battle that took me dozens of attempts to get going, I tried multiple different strategies, but the one that worked to the best effect was using a combination of invisibility potions and potions of speed to ambush Cazador for a ton of attacks, including Richter stunning him with Stunning Strike and Shadowheart using Divine Intervention, which will be our Grand Cross final smash for this fight since Simon and Richter don't have it yet. You can just pretend that it was Simon that did that. And I had Astarion summon a wolf with his vampire powers. I made him invisible and positioned him to free Astarion from the ritual as soon as he gets pulled in. I had Astarion bomb Cazador, and after being freed, he completed the bombing run with a black hole. That was all just in round 1. Oh, I also had Simon uppercut Cazador and beat him while he was on the ground. From there, Shart summoned her peeps and set up a Spirit Guardian. Richter beat Cazador to a pulp. Most of the ads in the fight killed themselves on Shart's Guardian of Faith or Spirit Guardian. Cazador tried to take out Astarion in one final act of spite, but instead got taken out by Astarion himself. And then we finished off the rest of the enemies. Astarion confronted the man that had ruined his life for several lifetimes, and while I convinced him not to ascend, he did gleefully enjoy brutally shanking Cazador to death, at which point he had a moment of cathartic relief and bawled his eyes out. With the evil vampire slain and the Belmont family legacy secured, the rest of Cazador's spawn, who were much too naked to include in the video, were given a chance to live their lives in peace without harming the innocents like Astarion before them, though Simon unfortunately refused to extend that same offer to the thousands of spawn who Astarion thought were too far gone. The XP from that fight pushed the rest of the party to the next level like Simon before the fight, and Richter took a second level of Cleric and bumped Wisdom to start working on Divine Intervention or Grand Cross. The Gur were also happy that we defeated Cazador, and though they were upset that their children couldn't be saved, they still agreed to forgive Astarion and be our allies. With quite possibly the most important quest of the run complete, I wanted to pick away at some of the main quests so that I wasn't left doing all of Act 3's main quests after finishing all of my side objectives, so I went to go stop Baldur, the Ballist serial killer responsible for a number of deaths in the city, including Father Lorgan's. Normally you have to go around and do some investigating, then you find him, and then you have to chase him around the city until a final confrontation where the climax of this game of cat and mouse reaches a head. But I ain't doing all that. I just save scum and stun him so that my entire party can jump him before he gets a chance to escape. After taking out Baldur and then the rest of his doppelgangers, basically advancing Orin's quest to the Saravok fight, so right before the fight with her, I hopped over to the Steel Foundry to progress Gortash's quest, specifically the Foundry first to save Volo, but he wasn't even there, rather still being in my camp for some reason. Since that was the case, I instead cleared out Flim Cargo and used the Submersible to head to the Iron Throne underwater prison where the Gondian hostages are being held, which is what's forcing the Gondians at the Foundry to help Gortash make his Steel Watchers. Gortash, seeing that a free Gondian is as useless as a dead Gondian, decided to self-destruct the Iron Throne, so now I have 5 rounds to save like a dozen people. And yes, I wanted to save them all.
And the fucking Gondians are to blame for all of it!
I'll save you the headache of an hour and a half of failed attempts and just cut to the part where the heroes saved the day. To start, I had Simon give himself, Richter, and Shadowheart Longstrider, then I had him cast Enhanced Leap on himself. After entering the Iron Throne proper, I had Astarion Misty Step east, bonus action dash towards a cell, and then sneak attack the Sahuagin champion, Shadowheart Guiding bolted a Fishman, nearly killing it, and summoned a Spirit Weapon. Simon went west and killed a Sahuagin. The Quasit from the lamp that somehow magically got out at some point moved to free the two captives closest to the submersible. Then Richter used Step of the Wind dash and headed south where he freed Thindo. Astarion blackholed some Sahuagin and killed a champion because he was netted and couldn't move. Shart freed a captive, gave Thindo Sanctuary, and then headed west. Simon freed like 6 captives. The Quasit freed a captive. Richter freed a captive. Astarion Cosmic blinked back to the center of the prison. Shar Arcane gated one of the slower fleeing Gondians. Simon finished off a Sahuagin and moved to the middle. Richter dashed all the way to Omelum and freed him. The party then helped to cover the fleeing Gondians, who I believe I freed all of. Omelum teleports back to the ship, and everyone escapes except for Richter and Astarion, who I just revived later. Proud of my accomplishments and a level higher, with Simon and Richter both having taken another level of Cleric, I hopped back over to side quest content. Specifically, I took Jaheira with me, quickly stopped by the Society of Brilliance to get the reward for saving Omelum, and then get waylaid by... Orin. Yeah, okay, anyway. Then I spoke with Ninetoes of the Guild for a lead on the Stone Lord, who she revealed was a brainwashed Minsk, back again all the way from Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. After some investigating, we find out that he and the Absolutists that are brainwashing him are at the Counting House. So I head over, but Minsk escapes with a Jaheira doppelganger, and we're ambushed by ballists. This was a pretty tough fight even with Jaheira here, and the backup we got naturally, but eventually we prevail, get another level up where Simon and Richter again take another level of Cleric, Simon taking the Resilient Wisdom feat and Richter bumping Wisdom to 18, and we track Minsk down to a cistern, where we absolutely demolish the ballists, the Zentarum that were working with them, Jafeka, and finally Minsk, who we knock unconscious and then befriend after waking him up. Him and Boo were 2 of my favorite characters in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, so it's really nice to see them back again, which isn't something I can say for all of the returning characters, but we'll get to that later. For now, we returned the money the ballists stole to the bank, and then it was back to the Steel Foundry to finish off Gortash's Steel Watcher army. The fight outside the Foundry was simple enough, usual tactics and whatnot. The Steel Watchers leading into the Foundry weren't particularly tough so much as they just hit really hard, and, as luck would have it, because I freed the Gondian hostages in the Iron Throne before coming here, the Gondians were already revolting against the Banites, so joining in on the fight and aiding them to defeat their oppressors was super easy. We defeat everyone here without any casualties, with the Banites maybe still thinking that the Foundry could be salvaged at this point. For the battle at the next level down though, they seem to have thrown that idea to the wind and make sure to target the Gondians just as much as they do us. As nice as it would be to save all of the Gondians, that just wasn't happening. So I saved as many as I could and made sure none of those Gondian deleting devices went off, defeating all of the cultists and the Steel Watchers with only 3 Gondians surviving. Though we lost half of the Gondians down here, we did gain another level, making Simon and Richter now both 5th level clerics. Then it was time to take on the Titan. My first priority was taking out the Steel Watcher ads, which was fairly easy since Simon, Richter, and Astarion can drop them to self-destruct health range easily, and getting away from the blast is also easy, so whittling the encounter down to just us versus the Titan happened pretty quickly. Now, the defensive protocol made the fight a bit of a slog since I don't think I had any way to damage it, but the missile barrage was easy to dodge, so it was just a matter of navigating all the hellfire left behind and not getting killed by offense mode, which was actually pretty powerful. To try to increase my damage output here, I even used my Artistry of War scroll and both of my Dethroned scrolls since I have a habit of saving my scrolls and potions for hard fights, but never end up actually using them, which defeats the point of my spending hours collecting them for that very purpose. The scrolls definitely helped, especially Artistry of War, but in the end, what made the biggest difference was Simon using Arrows of Ilmater to prevent the Titan from regaining hit points in defensive mode, and Astarion's sneak attack damage. Shark kept getting down constantly throughout the fight, so I just had Simon and Richter both use a heal spell scroll on her to bump her back up to full health, maybe a waste in hindsight, and I had Astarion keep lobbing ICMBs at the Titan. Finally, when it was the Titan's turn to blow itself up, I had everyone drink a potion of speed and just run out of the room. That wasn't necessarily an easy fight, but I can definitely tell that my being over 12th level made this fight's difficulty more average rather than the challenge it would probably be normally. Or maybe not, I don't know, I don't have anything to compare it to. With the Titan destroyed, Xander helped us to nuke the Steel Foundry, and when Wolbrin then tried to get us to betray the Gondians after everything I just did to save them, and even after the Gondians tried to bury the hatchet and work with the Iron Gnomes, not only did I, of course, side with the Gondians, but little Barkus finally stepped up and threw a coup, ousting his dear disillusioned friend Wolbrin from the Iron Hand Gnomes and becoming the de facto leader of the group, where he agreed to ally both with the Gondians and with us. Good ending all around. Also, somehow, Volo thinks I saved him, so he runs all the way from my camp only to teleport right back to where he was, and his goofy ass starts talking about Saravok from BG1 and John Irenicus from BG2, which was actually pretty cool and definitely made me like BG3 Volo more. Anyway, now it's time to finish off Gortash. Unfortunately, Mazora informs us that Duke Ravengard has been executed. I think I would have gotten the chance to save him if I had gone to Gortash's inauguration. Like, I'm pretty sure he gets sent to the Iron Throne after the Gortash thing and you can save him there, but I don't know. Regardless, I'll deal with that later. Right now, I'm here to take out the Tyrant himself. I take out all of his fist goons on the first floor, and after I work my way to the top of the fortress to Gortash's private quarters, I take out as many of his shields and turrets as I can with lightning arrows before starting the fight with Enver. I took out all the wall shields I couldn't get to before the fight on the first round. I had Shart summon some adds. I had Astarion nuke the entire room with Nova Release and nearly kill Gortash with a double bonus action dagger shank. I had Simon then uppercut him right after he got up, and then I had Simon, Shart's Deva, and Shart's Spirit Weapon further jump Gortash. Gortash starts winding up, putting tyrannical curses on my people and summoning these guys that do something good for his people? I don't know. But with him already at half health and another round beginning soon, things continued to spiral downward for him. Shart summoned a Guardian of Faith, but would get locked down by this guy spamming Command Halt for like 3 rounds straight. I tried to finish off one of the Black Gauntlets with Astarion, but he missed with his final sneak attack. The Guardian of Faith scored a triple and then committed seppuku. I had Simon finish off the person Astarion failed to kill and the person that the Guardian nearly killed, and then it was just down to Gortash for the most part. I had Richter clobber him, he procced a bunch of attacks of opportunity, I had the Deva smite him, and then the Tyrant Curse one-shot Simon, but I wasn't too concerned since Astarion and Richter were both going on the same turn, so I had Astarion attack Gortash and one of his remaining allies, and then I had Richter finish said ally off and then throw a health potion on the ground to heal Simon. Immediately following that, Gortash straight up killed Richter, which kinda took me by surprise, but I literally just used the revive of Shart's Deva and brought him back instantly. Finally, I had Astarion finish off Gortash, Simon finished off the last enemy, and then Astarion got nuked by the Tyrant Curse. I imagine that fight can be very difficult under different circumstances, like with Steel Watchers there, or in the Grand Hall with tons of enemies. Both ways of doing the fight I might consider doing in future runs depending on the roleplay of the character I'm doing, but this fight as it was very fun. Not too difficult, challenging but not mind-numbingly so, and I got to wail on that clown DoorDash. 2 stones down, 1 to go. After that, I go ahead and take out the rest of the fists here and free Councilwoman Floric to help the city in light of Ravengard's passing, and I take Karlach to see Gortash's corpse in a very emotional and well-acted scene, though I must admit I'm confused as to why she's so concerned with dying. Like, you'll just be taken by your god to an awesome afterlife. It blows that your time in the Prime Material realm was essentially stolen, but being dead isn't really all that bad in light of what awaits you. In any case, the last thing I want to take care of in Worm's Rock is the fight with Ansur, the undead dragon former ally of Balduron, founder of Baldur's Gate and current Mind Flayer helping us. Pretty cool plot twist that I was definitely impressed by and enjoyed a lot more than the Emperor simply being a nameless adventurer, and I was also excited for the Ansur fight as, while I've never done it, I had seen it in videos and it looked really cool and fun, especially with how powerful Ansur is, second only maybe to Raphael and all of BG3. I completed all of Balduron's trials pretty easily, except for the Torch trial, which took some doing. But that aside, after leveling up, getting remarkable recovery for Simon, and lucky for Richter, it was time to face the dragon himself. I made sure to buff myself with a bunch of spell scrolls, and then started the fight by having Deva smite Ansur, which gets my party lightning blasted, and by having Shart try to contagion him, which he's immune to. Yeah, not a great start. Well, Astarion starts off the actual offense with a solid sneak attack, Simon belts off a dozen vampire killer attacks that, while they don't trip Ansur, they do some decent damage. The Azur I summoned also smites Ansur like the Deva did. Richter uses the celestial haste from the bow I got from the Hellfire Titan, and unleashes a barrage of vampire killer attacks on Ansur. And just like that, only a round in, and Ansur is down from 600 hit points to nearly 450. The water and air elementals around may have presented an issue, but I wanted to focus Ansur as much as possible. He flew away, but I had Astarion Misty step to him and keep up the offense. The Deva had to dash over to him, but Shart was close enough to land a Grand Cross, a 9th level flame strike that did 50 damage. I wasn't quite in axe throwing range with Simon at this point, so I just had him dash over to a point that he could make it next turn, and instead had Richter jump close to Ansur, use Bolt of Celestial Light, and throw an axe, reducing Ansur's health to around 375. The Deva was again a smidge too far away to hit Ansur, but a second Grand Cross Flame Strike from Shart at 8th level dropped Ansur to nearly 350, though the ensuing Draconic Wrath cost our Deva its life. An Astarion Sneak Attack drops Ansur to nearly 300, the Air Elemental I think heals him a bit with Electricity, Simon jumped in and got Opportunity Attacks somehow, which cost him his turn, and then Richter redeems him by landing a double hit. Ansur begins charging for his Nova attack thingy, so I have Shart Arcane Gate Simon away since he was prone and likely couldn't make it on his own. I had Astarion Cosmic Blink away and sneak attack the Water Elemental, I had Richter dash away, and I had Simon finish off the Water Elemental that had followed them. Ansur did his Stormheart Nova, which KO'd everyone but Astarion, but that's okay because I just had Astarion throw down a health potion for Shart and Simon and then drink one himself. Shart then healed Richter, then Simon and Richter drank health potions, everyone's good. He attempted to take us out with his powerful lightning attacks, but we continued the assault against him, dropping him now to only 150 health. Finally, after some axes thrown and some vampire killer whips, he was down to 35 HP. He started gathering energy for Stormheart Nova, so I quick saved here because I thought I could maybe kill him before he annihilated us, since even though his gathering energy grants him resistance to everything, he only had 35 hit points, and after a couple of tries, it worked. Well, it did, until Unrelenting Storm activated and he regained 1 hit point instead of dying, gained 100 temporary hit points on top of that, and then started gathering energy again. I thought that I was absolutely fricked at this point, totally dangled. I thought I had bricked my save and lost the run. I just needed a way to survive one single round. And then I remembered. After raiding the Sorceress Vault, I had like 3 scrolls of Globe of Invulnerability. I had never even used the spell before, but here, it saved my life. After that, I simply tapped him once and the fight ended, defeating Ansur the Dragon and reaping the rewards. At this point, almost done with all the side quest content I'd planned to do, I decided to do the last main quest fight before getting the final Netherstone from Orin and fighting the final boss. That fight being the Saravok fight. Now, Saravok is one tough customer, which is scary considering he's also smart enough to trick all of Baldur's Gate into thinking he's someone else just by reversing his name, like Superman wearing glasses. The Tribunal Echoes were easy to dispatch, thankfully, since they buffed Saravok, but the man himself would have cleaved through my whole team like a hot knife through butter if I hadn't stocked up on a ton of health items, and his undead knights weren't slouches either. After I focused the Echoes and took them out, the fight basically became Shart and Richter fight the knights, and Simon and Astarion fight Saravok. Splitting the fight was all I could do to avoid getting overwhelmed, and even then, Simon and Astarion were both losing fairly badly until Richter and Shart finished off the knights. Even 4v1, the fight literally boiled down to Astarion sneak attacking and then getting as far away as possible, Simon and Richter doing whatever they could just to land a hit and then subsequently survive the ensuing 8-attack onslaught, and Shart sharting, Luckily, by the grace of God, we were able to slowly but surely whittle down Saravok until we defeated him with one final crack of Simon's vampire killer. Honestly, mostly thanks to Astarion sneak attacks. After freeing Detective Valeria, it was time to finish up the last of the optional side content, the House of Grief and the House of Hope. Well, I see why they call it the House of Grief, as that's all it brought me. First, for every Volo and Jaheira and Minsk that was brought back from the old games and done excellently, there are Saravoks and, of course prevalent to the current discussion, Viconias that were completely mishandled and rewritten to wipe away entire games worth of character development. It gave me grief to see Viconia reduced to crazy evil Sharon lady after all the work the original Ballspawn did, and it most certainly brought me grief to fight her and her 25 allies that all do like 20 damage per turn, and half of which spam Bone Chill to prevent you from healing. Without cheesing the fight, every attempt was like death by 1,000 cuts. But eventually, after coming to the conclusion that focusing the low health adds first was the more effective strategy of priority, and that I should use some AoE attack spell scrolls, I was able to kill off most of the usual suspects for Fight Ender before losing Shard and the Belmonts, at which point Astarion clutched up, locked in, and soloed the last 5-ish Sharons. I even accidentally killed Viconia mid-fight. Like, I knew she got knocked out instead of killed probably for some special reason, which I later found out was so that she could give a dying monologue to Shart, but that's okay, I don't really care what evildoers have to say anyways. Well, with the Mother Superior dead, Genevieve was able to have an honestly incredibly touching and heartwarming scene with her parents before she cut ties with Shar, causing Shar to kill her parents, but also in turn allowing Selene to save their souls. I really enjoyed this companion quest conclusion, maybe more than any other, though Astarion's is a close second, and I haven't done Lae'zel, Will, Halsin, or Minthara to completion, so grain of salt. With the House of Grief done, I convinced Hellsick to send me to the Hells, giggled to myself about the prospect of a Doomslayer run where I literally just enter the House of Hope and kill everyone, and then I start my first mission here, saving Hope. First I gotta get the Orphic Hammer to free her from the infernal chains, so I go and fight Raphael's boy toy. The first go around he summons a bunch of ads that Eldritch blast my homie off a cliff, but eventually I was able to take out the little imps he summoned and then finish him off despite his tricks like becoming ethereal and charming my party. That got Simon a level up, which bumped him up to 7th level cleric, and afterwards, I stole the Orphic Hammer and some other useful trinkets from Raphael's collection, which in turn also bumped Richter up to 7th level cleric, but Raph sent all his debtors and fiends to stop me. With an infinite source of long rests now available, it was really easy to just fight my way through all of Raphael's stands to get to Hope. Being that this was really going to be my last opportunity to use any stealth items I have, here's what I did. I gave Astarion the hammer, had him and Shart drink potions of invisibility, had her stand next to Hope so that she can teleport her to safety when she's free, had Astarion take out the first chain, had him turn invisible again and sneak to the other side, had him break the second chain, had Shadowheart then Arcane Gate Hope out, and then I got Astarion out of there. That was simultaneously really smooth and really cool that I got her out of there without having to fight any of the guards. I wanted to enjoy that victory because I knew what waited for me next was the hardest fight in the game. And I was definitely intimidated to say the least, but a Belmont never shirks their duty and never backs down in the face of evil, especially not a threat like Raphael. This ends now. I confronted Raphael, and after not even giving him the satisfaction of words, I started by doing a Nova release with Astarion to deal a ton of damage to almost everyone. Astarion Hunters marked Raphael, and then I stabbed him with Astarion's final bonus action. A Cambion did a Ray of Fire on us, and that was the last time my party was attacked. The last time Raphael's evil team of dastardly devils really did anything at all. See, in the following turn, I had Shard attempt to cast Guardian of Faith next to Raphael, but in order to cast it at the point I selected, she would have to move, which isn't that big of a deal since the game puts her in position automatically if she has the movement. The problem here is that she moved into position, began casting, and then never did. I tried to switch to the Deva to force the action through, but nothing worked. I was terrified that I'd have to fight the hardest encounter in the game a man down, but something strange happened. Every time it was an enemy's turn, they simply just passed their turn. none of the enemies were doing anything. I don't know this for sure, but my guess is that because Shart took an action that was confirmed in the game's queue but was never executed, all the NPCs keep registering it as Shart's turn, or at least that Shart was in the middle of an action, which prevented them from doing anything. I was freaking out because of how difficult I expected this fight to be, and the first time I ever face Raphael, I bust the game wide open and defeat everyone without ever really even being attacked. Since Simon and Richter aren't quite at the right level to use Divine Intervention, their Grand Cross, but Hope can actually use it twice, I just had her use Grand Cross twice in place of them. I also had Simon use up the last of his holy water, but after dwindling Raphael to the lasts of his health, he kept charming us. So I kinda regretted not making a ton of holy water before the fight using the restoration fountain to spam ceremony, since it would have allowed me to attack him without targeting him, which would have been a perfect use of holy water. Regardless, after one final AoE Radiance of the Dawn from Richter, the Archdevil son of a Hell-Lord, Raphael, had been exterminated like a cockroach. With everything I had planned for Act 3 done, it was time to face Orin for the last Netherstone, and then to defeat the Netherbrain. On the Gang Jump Bridge, I killed the Farslayer, which earned me passage to the Chosen of Baal and my kidnapped ally Lae'zel. Before going in, I took a rest, told Will to let his father go, chased off this devil skank, and had one last heartwarming moment with Shart where I honestly couldn't resist giving her a hug. Now facing Orin in Slayer form back from Baldur's Gate 2, and with her cultists channeling Baal's unstoppable power to her, I had Astarion wipe out most of them in the offset with Nova release, had him take a potion of speed to black hole the rest of the cultists, and from there, it was a slugfest in the purest sense of the word. I had Richter's Celestial Haste and Action Surge to go and take out Orin's Death's Head, and the rest of the party just fought Orin in the biggest smackdown, knuckle-dragging, all-out brawl of the run. Even Saravok had me healing and using tactics to avoid having my team destroyed member by member, but after everything up to this point, I literally just had my team stand up and take it. I was literally just trying to kill her faster than she was killing me. After getting rid of her stacks of Unstoppable, with Shart's support, Richter and Simon's dozens of powerful attacks with their vampire killers, and Astarion's powerful attacks at the start of the fight, Richter was able to make quick work of the monstrous beast and slay the final of the Dead Three's Chosen, also acquiring all of the Netherstones. I level up unfortunately for the final time of this run, just narrowly missing 20th level as comments in Act 1 and 2 made me think might happen, and I took my final level of Cleric for Simon and Richter, 8th level at 19th level overall, just one level shy of Divine Intervention, hence why Shart and Hope using it for the Cazador and Raphael fights will have to be our de facto uses of Grand Cross. After failing my first attempt to dominate the Elder Brain, succeeding on my second, and actually succeeding on the third, the DC 99 check, making my current record for succeeding this check without any manipulation 2 for 2, the Emperor saved us when it ultimately failed, and we began the final battle of Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur unfortunately had to eat Orpheus's brains, which upset Voss, but I convinced him to ally with us anyway, and after a rousing speech amongst all my allies, which was actually really awesome to see, like it's the tangible reward for gathering allies, I began the battle at the courtyard. This battle took a while because of how many people were in combat, but after a long and hard-fought battle, we defeated all of the Absolute's cultists and mind flayers and made it to the sprint to the top of the fortress to climb onto the Netherbrain. I wasn't really feeling this, so I just had Astarion drink a haste potion and a flying potion and just skip past it all to the final confrontation. This was a battle of epic proportions. I took the opportunity here to haste most of my party and use their double actions to summon every ally I had made. I called my Owlbear all grown up, Councilwoman Florix Fists, Iron Hand Gnomes, a Gondian Steel Watcher, Dame Aelin, Zevlor and his Hell Riders, the Gur, some Harpers, I sent in a massive fire spell and dragon bombardments from Roland and Voss respectively, had healing help from Isabel and Selene herself. It was truly a final battle befitting this run, but it wasn't over yet. During the fight, a second Nautiloid appeared to destroy us before we could get to the brain, so we all hurried inside as fast as we could and left the fight to our allies. With the way open, Balduron used a concentration blast on the brain, Richter hit it with a bolt of celestial light and another arrow, The brain began destroying platforms and gave itself immunity to the prior damage types. Astarion made it in and casted a scroll of bestial communication since the brain was immune to piercing damage. Simon died in the prior battle, so I had Shart use a scroll of revivify and then arcane gate them both to the portal to the brain. I had Richter whip the brain with his vampire killer. The brain destroyed some platforms and gave itself immunity to bludgeoning damage. I had the Deva smite it for radiant damage and fear. I had Astarion fire on it with its bow, and had Shart use a 7th level Flame Strike Grand Cross on it, then again with a 6th level Grand Cross. I had Simon Hunter's mark it and try to throw some axes at it, but it didn't seem to be possible for some reason. So I instead had Simon heal himself by throwing down some potions. I had Richter get off the crumbling platform with an arrow of transposition, and now I was in a pickle. The brain was immune to most of my damage types at this point. There were no platforms close to the brain for melee attacks, and there were only 2 rounds left until the auto wipe. Then I had an idea. It was finally time to use all of my scrolls. I had Astarion use Bone Chill for necrotic damage. I had Shart use Circle of Death for more necrotic damage and Ray of Sickness for poison damage. I had Simon cast Enhanced Leap so that he could get onto the last remaining platform, and I had Richter dash for it. Last platform, final round. With the brain at less than 100 health left and only immune to necrotic and poison damage, this was it. In an all-out final burst, I had Astarion fire on it twice with his bow after using a potion of speed, as there's no better time to use the last of my hasting stuff than now. I had Simon go for a cross throw that completely whiffed, so I ultimately chose to finish with some arrows. And for Richter, the last of my team, I potion of speeded, braced, hit the brain with a 4th level fireball, missed my first arrow shot with a 95% chance to hit, and with my last attack on the last round of the final fight, I hit with my arrow and did 16 damage, the exact amount I needed to defeat the brain. Against astronomical odds, I had done it. I had defeated all of the mighty foes that stood in my way, defeated the Netherbrain itself, and saved Baldur's Gate and the world from the Mind Flayer grand design. Now for the bad news. Have you all ever heard of the expression, tripping at the finish line? Yeah, well, as we were all celebrating my victory, all my companions started making plans for the future. Because of Orpheus's death, Lae'zel was planning to flee Vlaakith to the astral plane, but I wanted to convince her to stay. Now, this was a pretty tough check, DC 30, and I really wanted this for my happy ending, so I dropped a quick save so that I could save scum it. Well, I failed it and tried to reload, but the dialogue was stuck. I don't know if this is punishment for my hubris for flying too close to the sun and save scumming at the end, or if this is karma for the free Raphael fight, but no matter what I did, I couldn't get the check to execute anymore. Dialogue just froze with Lae'zel staring at me staring at Lae'zel in her undies, and Baldur on side-eyeing us both. I tried exiting the game and reloading, restarting my Xbox, uninstalling and reinstalling my mods, everything I could think of short of uninstalling and reinstalling the game, and nothing worked. Which was incredibly frustrating and disappointing, as I kinda feel robbed of the ending I've been working towards for like a month, but at the very least this happened after the final boss fight. I may not be able to reload a prior save to try again, thanks to single save mode, the king of screwing up my runs so far, but at least I tripped on the finish line and face-planted past it, ultimately completing the race. This run was probably my favorite run I've done so far for both YouTube and on my personal time. If you guys have any suggestions for who you want to see next in Baldur's Gate 3, let me know in the comments down below. I went ahead with Simon this time since it matched Halloween, it had lots of community support, and I also wanted to do it too, but most of the time for future videos, I'll do a poll consisting of characters I want to do and characters you guys suggest, specifically 4 options based on my D&D homebrew build slogan. 1 anime rep, 1 comic rep, 1 TV show rep, and 1 video game rep. For example, because of how much it's been asked for in the past, and because I'd love to do the run, I'm pretty sure the anime rep is going to be Jonathan Joestar, my king and my favorite JoJo, but I'd also like to do, like, Vampire Hunter D, Dragon Ball, Naruto, One Piece, Bleach, JJK, lots of different anime. For comics, I'm a Marvel man and a DC man, so I'm just as excited to do Moon Knight as I am for Batman. I don't know a lot of TV show characters, honestly, but I have some interesting ideas for movie characters, and you guys might have some TV character ideas that I might want to do, and video game character ideas are endless. From platformer icons like Mario and Sonic, to characters from games popular on the channel like Solid Snake and V, to characters from some of the best role-playing games out there like characters from Soulsborne games, or even characters from Baldur's Gate like Saravok or John Arenicus. The possibilities are pretty much endless. Alright, I'll see you guys all in the next video. Peace!